Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think we're ready to begin. And my job is a simple one, just to welcome you all to the Design Conversations lecture series, sponsored by the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. It's good to see you all, and it's great to have a full house here, as usual. We have a couple of things to take care of before we start today. I just would like to announce that one of our alums in graphic design, Chris Bailey from Philadelphia, Bailey Design Group, has generously supporting our videotape documentation of the lecture series. And so a big word of thanks to Chris Bailey. And otherwise, I'm going to, at this point, toss the ball to my colleague Josh Owen, who will pick up from here. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Roger. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see such a packed house tonight for our exciting lecturers, who we're delighted made it through difficult weather conditions to get here. I'm going to take a few minutes to start off with to announce our 2015 RIT Industrial Design Glass Lab Design Fellowship Award. A number of years ago, we did a cooperation with our friends at the Corning Museum of Glass and our other friends in the glass program here at RIT under the banner of the Vignelli Center in the Senior Studio Meta Project. And we had a wonderful time working together with Corning and with artists and designers in the same cohort. We learned a lot about each other and about the medium. Turns out Corning is an incredibly forward-thinking company, and they've organized something which they call Glass Lab, which exposes glass technology and hot glass as a medium for rapid prototyping to architects and designers, and they're specifically interested in that. They brought me down to do this Glass Lab shortly after we completed the student collaboration, and I was so enamored by the experience that I worked closely with them to set up a fellowship, which would be a sort of feeder to Corning, bringing young industrial designers to go and do Glass Lab, which is essentially 2 days worth of working with master glass technicians in the rapid prototyping of design ideas. So in 2012, we had 2 students go down and do it. In 2013, we formalized the fellowship, and David Strauss was the recipient. Last year it was Bridget Sheehan, both of them grad students in ID. I think Bridget's here tonight somewhere. Bridget, are you here? Where are you? There she is. How was it? All right, there you go. So the Glass Lab Fellowship provides one RIT industrial design student, either a graduating senior or graduating grad student, with an opportunity to explore glass as a medium for rapid prototyping in a 2-day Glass Lab session at the Corning Museum of Glass at the end of May each year. In addition to the CMOG session, the student is eligible to receive transportation reimbursement, an overnight stay in a hotel in Corning, and a $500 honorarium, and public acknowledgments from both RIT and CMOG. The criteria we've used for the selection of that student each year is that the faculty are looking for exceptional design skills, excellent communication skills across mediums, such as verbal, drawing, etc., a high degree of maturity, and most importantly, a strong track record of meaningful contributions to the industrial design program at RIT in terms of service to the department. The award design was done in a team several years ago, together with myself, with a glass artist from the School for American Crafts, a industrial design senior, and with Katie Nix, who's my colleague here in the Vignelli Center. Uh-oh. There we go. There should be another slide. Well, the other slide's not there, but I can tell you who the award recipient is. So the award this year goes to a graduating graduate student from industrial design who, to the faculty, represented all the qualities that we look for. In addition to those qualities, we felt that this individual would benefit greatly from the experience in their career path. It was not an easy choice. It never, ever is. This particular second-year graduate class is sort of a group of wunderkind, we say, of students from all over the world, all of them deeply passionate about industrial design, and interestingly, all of them twisted my arm into doing something like a glass lab with Corning last year. So they've all had an experience with glass lab already. That said, there was one clear winner, and this year's award goes to Timothy Copeland. So come on up. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it.
I will.
So Corning will be in touch soon about the details.
Okay.
All right.
I'll keep my phone charged.
All right. Exciting stuff. So, and now on to the meat of the act here, so to speak. We are delighted to have Antenna Design with us tonight. Do you want me to open it, or should I do it? Okay. Antenna Design New York was founded in 1997 by Masamichi Udagawa and Siggy Mosengler. Antenna's people-centered design work typically spans both physical and digital spaces, taking into account object, interface, and environment. In the public sector, Antenna has experience ranging from the design of New York City and Washington, D.C. subway cars to the automated ticket vending machines for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority. On the commercial side, Antenna works with technology companies to help them identify and design user-focused products and services. Antenna also has a close relationship with the office furniture company Knoll Incorporated, for which Antenna has been designing office systems since 2006. Antenna's work has won numerous awards, including the prestigious National Design Award in Product Design from the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in 2008, and Antenna's Help Point Intercom for the MTA is included in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Thank you for coming, and we welcome Antenna Design and are delighted that you're here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh, for a nice introduction, and thank you, everyone, for being here and invited us over.
Yeah, we are very happy to be here. We were here once before, about more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so it's great to be back. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, well, let's see. The time flies. It's been already over 18 years since we started our studio, and we've been quite lucky to have a collection of very good clients and projects. And we'd like to talk about some of the projects and talk about what we were thinking with it. We have a studio in New York City, in the far west Chelsea, and being in New York is quite a learning experience of its own. There are lots of funny people, and always interesting to observe, but more interesting to imagine what's happening in their heads, which is a really important part of the job for us, because we believe the purpose of the design is to change the behavior of the people for the better. And for that, we subscribe to rather old philosophy, which is called City Beautiful. That's one of the Enlightenment movement from 19th century, North American version, based largely on city planning and architecture. The idea of City Beautiful is simply by making great urban space through the architecture and monuments and the city planning, we can generate better behavior amongst the members of society. It's a very idealistic idea, but going through quite a few public projects with New York and DC, we came to believe this is really, or rather, we hope this is true, and this is our sort of a source of energy to go forward.
One of our first projects in the public realm, or maybe the first project in the public realm, was to design the ticket vending machine for the Metro card, which is the card that gives you access to the subways and the buses. And that project actually started
Late 90s, and the machine was introduced in 99. So you have to kind of step back and imagine the past. It's way before
iPhone or any smartphone, and way before the generation where everybody is using a touch screen. Also, automation back then wasn't something that people embraced, because a lot of public equipment has been in bad condition, has been vandalized, malfunctioning. You saw a lot of things like this payphone, which you would not want to put your money in that. So
because these machines just eat your money.
So it was in that context that we had to come and design a ticket vending machine that had a touch screen, and that was placed in the subway environment, which is a very harsh environment, which exposed to a lot of vandalism, and also, as I said, a lot of skepticism towards a machine. Also, as I mentioned, this was really before touchscreens were pervasive. Actually, when the project started, we thought people must be familiar with ATMs, because ATMs had, of course, touchscreens already then. But it turned out that at the time, about 50% of the ridership of New York City Transit or of the MTA actually did not have a bank account. So they were completely in the cash economy. So they had no experience with a touch screen. What they know about a screen is a television screen, and a television screen you're not supposed to touch. So again, this was something where we really had to shift people's behavior and embrace touchscreen. So then this is the machine, how it is in service, and it's been in service since 99 and is still going. There has not been any change to the hardware design or the screen interface design, and we're quite happy. A few years ago, the MoMA had an exhibition called Talk to Me about interface design, and an actual working machine was included in the gallery, and people could go and buy. There was a special edition Metro card at the event, and it is actually rare to see interface design that lasts this long. If you look nowadays, websites and other user interfaces get redesigned every few years. So, and we think one of the reasons that it has been so successful is that we really tried to mimic a human dialogue with the machine. So each screen has a very limited set of information on it. There's one question per screen and then a few answers. So you can very quickly hop from screen to screen. When we did that, initially, a lot of people were saying, well, why don't you put more stuff on one screen? Then you need fewer screens. But our user testing showed that this was far faster because people remember the positions and they can just zip through the transaction. And also, we were able to tie together the screen interface and the hardware interface through color coding, because if you look at the machine itself, it's kind of a big machine, and we could not change the component layout. So wherever cash receptacle was, or card entry and so on, all of that was given. So what we did is we grouped things that belong together with these kind of simple colored bezels. And so anything on the interface that has to do with cash is green, and the cash deposit bezel is green. Everything that has to do with receipts or change, again, the instruction is red, the bezel is red, and so on.
That's another equipment we designed for New York City subway. It's just the intercom. So in case of emergency, you should be able to find it easily. And you can also ask about the services if you push the green button. So it needs to be super visible because it is supporting the emergency situation if it happens. But at the same time, we didn't want to make the machine look so alarming. Then people are constantly reminded that there is imminent danger around, which is not quite comfortable because such thing luckily doesn't happen too often. But nevertheless, we have to make it visible and recognizable. So we took a cue from more of the street light. So it has very skinny, nice to live with the presence. So people don't need to freak out all the time.
Just on a side note, this device was designed already in 2004, and as Josh mentioned, it was included in MoMA's permanent collection, but it only actually started being implemented about 2 years ago. Right? So you can also see that working with public authorities, sometimes you have to be very patient. We actually thought at one
always.
So we actually at one point thought this is gone. It's not happening, and because often there are leadership changes and then priorities change, and so we were very, very happy when the program came back, and now you have it pretty much in every station. And if a station doesn't have it yet, then it'll get it shortly.
Actually, we need patience with all projects, not just for the public project. After the vending machine, we were now asked to design the train. And this is the first train we designed, started running in 2000 for New York City. It's the inside of the train. The one thing we understand about the public space is the importance of the safety. That's the most important design criteria. And if we could help reduce the crime or other petty crimes through the design, that's really a good thing. One thing we thought about is bad things tend to happen in the darkness. So we tried to achieve extra brightness in the interior. That was done through the color scheme. As you can see, it has shiny black floor and bright wall and the ceiling. This contrast generated the feeling of expanding space. Not only it's bright, but it felt much larger. The other point, the other detail I'd like to point out is at the end of the seat, you see somewhat decorative-looking diagonal bars there, but it's not for ornamentation. We worked with NYPD, and they told us there are quite a few incidents when train pulls into the platform, station platform, and the door opens, and someone on the platform reaching into the car and snatching necklace or handbag, or just simply attacking for fun. And they asked us to provide some ways to protect the passenger. First, we had a different style. We proposed the breath-proof glass, the large breath-proof glass, which keeps things transparent. But the emerging vandalism back then, and still continues, that is scratching, scratchity sometimes it's called. It's really artless form of vandalism, and if we provide a large sheet of glass, it becomes the perfect target for them. So we moved to stainless steel bars. It's easy to maintain, but originally they were arranged horizontally, and when we looked at it, it looked more like ladder. And if something looks like ladder, then the people will use it as such, especially kids. So if train design encourages kids to climb up and down the ladder and maybe get injured, that's our responsibility. So we made it diagonal to simply not to send the invitation. So by being diagonal, of course, physically, kids can still go up, but it's not sending that message.
This is a subsequent fleet also for New York City. New York City has different divisions. That goes back to the time when the subways were operated by various competing companies, so there's not one standard. And when we did this fleet, we also had the opportunity to design a fully digital strip map. And that's, again, something very important for New York City, because very often trains don't go where they're supposed to go. So you sit on a train, you think you're going to your destination, and suddenly you look out the window and you're in a different stop. And that happens because trains get rerouted, or there are service changes because of repairs. So with these maps, the operator can put in the correct program and make sure that customers know exactly where the train is going and whether it's stopping, where they need to stop. And that, again, helps people reassure themselves in their trip and makes them more calm, and we think that makes them less prone to vandalism.
After a success in New York City, we were invited to design the new fleet for Washington, D.C. Metro. Obviously, that's rendering. At the interior bird's eye view.
And here you can see it has a rather different layout than New York City. New York City has all longitudinal benches. Here we have mostly transverse seats. So every city has different preferences in terms of how they want to accommodate their people and what kind of layout fits best. DC has more more above ground area, and also the rides are sometimes longer.
It's a bit of a hybrid between commuter rail and urban transit.
So people prefer the transverse seating. Then you can see here we actually were able to do these glass seat ends, which we already wanted to do in New York. And so one of the nice things in DC was that people behave a little bit better there. It's not quite as harsh of an environment. So we were able to do things we couldn't do in New York, such as the glass seat ends, and also the seats themselves are upholstered, so they're a little bit soft.
The first train set started the test run last year in January, and it's scheduled to start passenger service in a month or so. So you can see it's very much like our concept design realized.
Then this is one of our latest projects. In fact, it is still ongoing as we speak. I'm sure you've noticed that public payphones are almost dying. I mean, hardly anybody is using them anymore because most people have their own cell phones. For example, in New York City, there's so many payphones that don't work anymore, or they are in very bad condition. So New York City decided that when the their existing franchise contracts with the different companies that were running the payphones ran out. They would put out a bid for a new type of communication structure that will replace all the payphones in New York City. And so we were hired by a company, a new consortium actually of different companies called CityBridge. And with the help of our design, they won the franchise contract. And so now, over the next several years, there will be up to 10,000 of these units deployed.
Throughout New York City, including all boroughs.
So again, this will have a quite big presence in the kind of cityscape. So it was very important for us to come up with a design that's instantly recognizable, so people can easily find one of these stations. But at the same time, these will be out there for many years, and they have to go into different neighborhoods and different contexts. So it's important to design something that has the appropriate civic feel and that is timeless enough. So we came up with this kind of slim, tall structure, and it has essentially 3 sides. 2 sides have large displays for advertising and public service announcements. And by the way, these structures are entirely funded by advertising. So the city doesn't pay anything. On the contrary, every year they get a certain percentage of the ad revenue from the franchisees. And then the skinnier side has a small touch screen. So this is sort of the more personal, interactive area for the public, where they can still make phone calls if they need to. And they can also do a host of other things, such as they can plug in their cell phones to recharge. They can call up local information on a touch screen. They can do video call. And the structure itself is actually a Wi-Fi hotspot, so it will also create kind of a coverage all over the city so that people have Wi-Fi access anywhere. This the device on the right-hand side is a version without the advertising screens, because these units also go into residential areas where advertising is not permitted and not desirable, so they don't have those screens on the side. And here's a close-up. So for if you have to make a 911 call, you just have a single button. Otherwise, you have an interface that's fully ADA compliant. And also, this is a kind of an open platform, so there is the potential to do a lot of new things, which we don't know yet. But in the course of time, it will become more evident for what this thing all can be used for. Also, the shape, as you can see, it's sort of monolithic, but then it has a kickback at the bottom, and that is really to articulate the interactive side. So it gives orientation to the device, and people always know which is the side to walk up to for their personal interaction. And it also creates a little bit of a more private zone, because if you are making a call, you obviously want to have a bit of privacy. And as you can see, there's no handset, so calls will be either speakerphone calls, or since nowadays so many people walk around with their own headsets, you can just plug in your own headset. So hopefully there will be maybe up to 300 by the end of the year, and then they will be continuously rolled out.
Before getting into the public space, we used to work in San Francisco Bay Area, and we've been working quite a bit on so-called high-tech products. That word sounds so dated now, but anyway. One of our long, great clients is Bloomberg LP. Bloomberg is, as some of you may know, that's a real-time financial information service company, but they do make their own hardware to enhance the usability and performance of the software, but also it is part of the brand communication effort. Great thing about software is it's flexible and you can do all kinds of things, but once you turn off the machine, everything disappears. So they won't have their own branded hardware, which has a permanent presence in the trading floor and offices.
Also, their equipment is not sold, it's leased, which means they are responsible for maintaining it. And so we were able to use materials that, at least at that time, were not as common for computer products, such as aluminum, steel, and we looked at it a little bit more like, almost a little bit more like office furniture in that sense. So it has a timeless presence. These screens are around for quite some time, unlike consumer screens, which, you know, they're there for a few years and then they're gone.
This is again for Bloomberg LP. It's their secure access device based on fingerprint scanning. That was introduced already quite some time ago, and back then the fingerprint scanning was seen with a little bit of fear. It inspired sort of Big Brother issue. So to encourage people to use this secure device, which advantage people understand rationally, but emotionally they have little fear. So we had to use a design to change that fear into something cool that people are willing to do. So we intentionally took this sort of a card form factor, which looks like very expensive card for exclusive club or something. So using this thing, you know, flipping out from the pocket, and using this thing is something cool. It's almost a bit like James Bond, like. So this is something people are willing to do and show off, even. Other terminal we designed for Bloomberg. It's physically very flexible that kind of embodies the brand message and functionality.
And then in 2006, we were approached by Knoll, and if we were interested in designing an office system. And of course we were like, Knoll, wow, we're so impressed. We're so big fans of all the classics, of the Saarinen, Bertoia, Florence Knoll's work, and Mies van der Rohe's work. So we were like super thrilled. And but Knoll asked us to design an office system. And office systems, even today, but more so in 2006, were predominantly these cubicles or cubicle landscapes. And as you know, a lot of jokes have been made about cubicles, and this is a still from Jacques Tati's Playtime. Many Dilbert jokes have been made about cubicles. And so Knoll didn't want us to do a cubicle system, actually. They wanted us to look at more of an open plan system. And so we thought, okay, we really like Knoll's staff, and Knoll has done office systems in the past too. It's not just the sort of classics that we know, but we actually looked into their archives, and this was one of the pictures we found. It was a design, an interior designed by Florence Knoll for Milliken's headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. And we thought, wow, why can't office furniture look like this today? Because we thought this is really stylish. Notice the ashtray on every desk.
And the rotary telephone, of course.
So we really set out to do an office system that felt like it was, first of all, that it felt like it was making use of Knoll's heritage that we admire so much, but also in contrast to a lot of the office systems, which you don't really perceive as furniture. They are just these panels and walls. We wanted to do something that also looks like furniture, but has, of course, the performance required of a systems product.
And after the 4 years of struggle, so you have to be patient, 2010, the system came out, named Antenna Workspaces, and it's a flexible office system based on desks and or desking system and the storage components.
And on the desk, of course, an important aspect is sort of the structure. I mean, it's what makes a desk. And so we were contemplating many different structures, and we were wondering, well, there's so many desks out, what should we do? And as we were thinking, we came across elevated highway. And we saw, okay, on the highway, you always have your verticals, and then you have the horizontal. And they don't intersect, which means it can go as long as it needs to be, and also the placement of the legs is very flexible. And you can have a narrow highway, or you can have one with many lanes. So we thought, okay, maybe this is a good structural concept, or a starting point for a good structural concept. But then we still needed to come up with some way of connecting the verticals and the horizontals. And there, another item was a kind of source of inspiration, which are these V-blocks, which we use in Model Shop, where whatever you drop in, it self-centers and stays in place. And this became sort of the basis for this connecting piece of our horizontal rail and our vertical U-shaped leg. We call it the cradle, and it makes a very, very strong connection. What you also see is our horizontal rail it's a square tube. It's actually this is a stock type of tubing, but we rotated it 45 degrees, so it looks like a diamond, which first of all made it easier to attach things to, but also it gave it a particular identity without having to add anything. So then this structural concept allowed us to have a very slender leg in sort of reference to Florence Knoll's 1-inch square tubular leg on many of her furniture. And the structure also lends itself very well to attaching things, hanging things from the structure, making very large top spans, being able to easily mount things upwards from the structure, and then make easy connections for returns. And with a limited kit of parts, we can start building large sort of multi-workstation desktops or benches. In the middle on this one, you can see a sort of large beam. This is actually not there for structural reasons, but it is there to give us attachment points for, we can mount storage boxes, we can mount screens, divider screens, as well as video screens, platforms, etc. And at the bottom, we can mount the modular power harnesses, and from there we mount cable management trays.
So a bunch of storage components, they are designed to help certain behaviors, new behaviors needed for the open space, open planning. People need to change the behavior when they moved from a closed cubicle to the open work environment, which is by default more social. You are together with your coworkers, and everyone's visible. So you have to modify how you behave. You can't just kick back in your cubicle and hiding from others.
So one of the elements we came up with is this, as you can see on the sketch, this L, which is a tower that provides a corner. And it provides a corner which sort of describes the boundaries of your space. So it, even on an open desk, it articulates each person's space, and it also suggests that invisible boundary. And so if somebody comes up, they can just sort of knock on your cabinet instead of walking right up and looking over your shoulder, which is very uncomfortable. So again, you can see the storage elements are used to either create enclosure or create continuity. Then this is a reception desk.
Setup, which is very approachable from the guest point of view, but for the person sitting behind the screen, it feels very protected. The mobile whiteboard, which works really like mobile whiteboard. It moves around, but it's very stable when you try to write it, which didn't exist until we came up with this one, surprisingly.
And so after the office system NOR basically asked us to look into areas that are a little bit more freely programmed, areas that are between, let's say, the function of a conference room and the personal workstation. Because people more and more are working in these interstitial spaces and they need some support to allow this work to happen. So this is a kind of hybrid stool desk, a little bit reminiscent of an old school setup, but it was completely driven by this new need of people walking around with their tablet computers all the time, and they need a small surface to put it down or a small laptop. This stool allows them to do that, but it also allows you to sit any way you want. You can use it like a traditional chair. You can use the upper platform as a kind of armrest, or you can use it as a support for your laptops. And then it's easy to pull a few of them together. Then we expanded this line with a few other elements. And so you can see how pieces of furniture like that sort of support and suggest quick casual meetings. And then of course, in any quick casual meeting nowadays, since there's always technology involved, you need power. So you can see here, this on a picture, this pole is to bring power in the middle of the space. So basically we came up with this, which evolved into a larger program, but it started out just as a pole that brings power down. But then we realized, okay, we can create certain accessories around that pole or certain mounting features to expand that to be more than just a power conduit. And then we also thought, well, we can actually put two of them together and then make a divider, which can be a marker board or other writable surface. So a bunch of accessories that can go in there. And then we thought, well, we can actually attach multiples together and really make this into dividers to create and define spaces in an open plan layout. And that can be more closed or more open depending on what type of space you want to create. And it sort of introduces a new flexible form of office planning.
And that's the first light that we designed. It's called Spiral, and it uses LED. We wanted to focus on the light itself and keep the supporting structure to bare minimum. So you can see the sort of head floating in the air. That looked sort of like a bird perching on a wire. That's where the name Sparrow came from. The wire frame is actually not just being structure, it conducts the electricity to the head. And the base has a minimum footprint that doesn't take up much space from your desk. It's the top view of the head. It looks like a sundial, and it's actually the radiator, meaning the heat dissipation device. The LED gets really hot, so it's very important to cool it efficiently, otherwise it will just die. All electrical components are housed in the handle, which also has the dimmer switch conveniently located. Recently, we saw the article. It says the sitting is new smoking. Well, we don't agree with that, but journalists sometimes try to stir up the discussion. But it is a good thing to move around. Keeping yourself in a particular position all day is certainly not healthy. And certainly the certain job requires you to be at your workstation for a long time. So it is good to have the desk which can go up and down and allows you to change your posture throughout the day. So we designed this, it's called a telescope.
Again, for Nord.
For Nord. And it has telescoping legs, so we call it telescope. It's quite obvious. But again, we try to make it more furniture than the machine. Lots of height adjustable desks are out there, including this guy. And from our observation, they tend to celebrate the mechanism. Thus, it becomes look like a machine. But we don't want to work with a machine. We want to work with furniture. I mean, if we are to spend so much time with it. The other part is the cable management, which is kind of a nuisance when you try to move your work surface up and down because all the cables have to travel together. So that's where we spend quite a bit of time to make it, we can't make it disappear, but managed. And again, there are lots of systems or products which does cable management, but not too well. Lots of cable management products are hard to use, so often people use it, I mean, people do it once, but electronic products, you have to swap around. So the second time, they don't use the cable manager anymore. So they make it easy to use is very important.
So you can see, also we made it easy to manage the cables underneath the table, and then we have a plate that closes everything and keeps it neat and clean. Again, if it's easy to do, people will do it. If not, people will make a mess. How are we doing time-wise? Good? Okay.
That was introduced last year.
Sometimes, sometimes we also do projects outside of the commercial context, not for clients, but for museums or galleries. These projects give us the opportunity to explore a topic that we are interested in personally and that we want to make an experiment around. This was a project where we were invited to make, we basically were designing an exhibition, an art exhibition on video art about performance and surveillance from the 60s to the present time. And as part of that exhibition, the curator also asked us to make a piece for the exhibition itself, a kind of intervention. We chose to make a kind of intervention. And the intervention was inspired by the fact that we often watch or observe people who have dogs and how the dog acts as a catalyst for social exchange and meeting people. So because the dogs gather, people have to start to talk to each other. And sometimes that can be a little bit odd because if you don't want to speak to somebody but your dogs are socializing, you have to do it too. But sometimes people have dogs precisely for that reason. So we found that an interesting topic and we thought, well, what can we do that makes use of this principle? So what we did is we made an installation with 4 stools that invited people to sit down. Remember, it was a art video show, so we figured those art videos can be a little bit exhausting to watch. Let's give people a place to sit down. But each stool had a camera embedded. And so this is what happens when you sit down. The camera starts taking your picture. And it takes the picture from a very odd angle, which means the photos are very unflattering. Nobody looks good on those pictures. And those pictures, once more than one person starts sitting down, the images are starting to make contact. They will visit each other. They have different behaviors. They can be a little bit shy, or they can dislike each other, then they repel, or they dance with each other. So you never know what your image is going to do with other people's images. And that can be a little bit embarrassing, certainly. So then people feel like they should say something to the other person whose image they are making contact with. And so we felt this was kind of a nice way to get strangers to talk with each other in a kind of museum or gallery context where people are usually very serious and quiet. And kids are always the best audience for these types of installations because they just play with it and they try to test the system and they often interpret more into it than there really is. So we like kids in installations.
That's another somewhat experimental project which we installed in the show window of Bloomingdale's in Midtown Manhattan. We were given the opportunity to take over the entire facade for 3 weeks. And we installed large neon flowers, which are electronically controlled and responding to the movement of passers-by. So when the sensor see the presence, it turns on the flower, and then it's too loud. Sorry. And then it fades out. But since the passers-by are just walking down the sidewalk, they turn on one by one. Sometimes people don't pay attention, but becomes sort of sort of like an actor, which is funny to observe. There's a good guy just turning everything on. So for duration of the installation, it totally transformed the street. It became sort of like a theater with audience and accidental actors. And again, the kids were the best participants. They thought actually the flower is responding to their dance move for some reason, so they're jumping up and down and try to invoke the new actions. It's all happening in their head.
And while these previous two installations were temporary, we also won a competition for a permanent installation in one of the new subway stations. And there the challenge was, they told us, we have to make something that has to last 100 years and with minimal maintenance. So this turned out to be quite a challenge because even though we actually won this project as artists, not as designers, it was very much a design project to really think about what can we do, how can we do it, and still maintain our underlying intention, which was to give people something that hopefully, as they rush through the station, puts a smile on their face or makes them sort of, for a moment, think of something else. And so we ended up with this curtain of flowers that's hanging from the ceiling, and it's static, it doesn't do anything, but because of the layering and because people in this space are in constant motion, it actually feels animated. There's a little bit of a parallax effect. And the way the flowers are attached, they actually have a little bit of flexibility. So, because we were told, okay, if somebody comes with a hockey stick and hits it, it has to survive. If somebody comes with a baseball and throw it up there, it has to survive. So it actually can give a little bit, but at the same time, it feels very immaterial, very light. It's not an obvious piece, and a lot of people we heard who use the station a lot, they didn't notice it at first. But to us, that's fine, because you have many, many years to enjoy it, And it shouldn't be something that you see and then it works on your nerves. So it's a very kind of subtle piece, but we hope it sort of brings a smile on people's faces. And the choice for the flower came from the fact that this area was an area that when the Dutch came to Manhattan, or that area, it wasn't called Manhattan then, called this area Blomendal, Valley of the Flowers. And it is also located between Riverside Park and Central Park. So we used the flower theme as the theme for the installation. And with that, I say thank you.
I think we have some time for some questions, if there are any from the audience.
Yes.
I'm just curious to know who your design heroes are.
Quite a few.
Certainly Vignelli, we'll say.
Yeah.
And Castiglione, we are big fans.
And all obvious ones, the Corbu, Mies, Florence Knorr, Mario Bellini, Dieter Rams. They are all, they're great architects and designers and artists. We are constantly learning. And yeah. Yes.
Can you say a few words about the dynamic between the two of you and how it's changed over the years in your design?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning we were fighting a lot more.
Now we can do this thing peacefully. Maybe a couple of things. In terms of the skill sets that Siggy handles more ephemeral things, I tend to do more mechanical things. And but we learned over the years very quickly, actually, that designing as sort of a team, I mean, design process as a dialogue, that was quite a sort of good discovery. It made things much quicker because we don't have sort of a formality, and we can just toss sort of a unbaked idea to the other side and get quick reaction. It's like, it's cut off, or it may be interesting. So that sort of a speed of hindsight, the feedback, that was really, again, the good discovery. We didn't know that, and to this date, that's been probably our strength.
Yep.
What advice would you give to the emerging designers in this room?
Be patient, very important.
And this is something I was told by Bill Mogridge. Be optimistic and opportunistic. That has quite a few implications. Optimistic, to be a designer is one particular occupation or job or lifestyle that needs optimism. As we mentioned in the beginning, this city beautiful. If I hear that when I was a design student, I might have said, well, nonsense, it's just too idealistic. But now I finally believe that. I mean, I won't believe it. That type of optimism is really needed to drive the project. And also being opportunistic is very important. When I started design work, I wanted to do certain thing, but that particular opportunity didn't come out, but something else came out. And as long as you do the opportunity in front of you as best as you can, then you succeed. That will open up the next door, or that will give you next opportunity. It may not be something, again, that you really want to do, but as you keep doing the best job with each opportunity, the new opportunities are coming. And one day you may get to do what you've been dreaming about, but most likely you change your mind because you went through so many interesting things, and you change now what you want to do. So it's a very kind of interactive thing. So I would say being optimistic and opportunistic is a very important thing.
And then another sort of more practical thing is get your work out there. People have to see your work. If it's just in your portfolio, and nobody knows. And nowadays you have so many more options on getting your work seen. But that was, I think, very important for us. And when we started, it was before all this kind of internet blogs and ample opportunities. But we really tried to, we participated in these design competitions and sent in stuff and really tried to get our work out there in front of people.
Yeah, publish or perish. That's what my teacher, Mike McCoy at Cranbrook, told us. So.
Yeah, another question. I'm teaching a class here, actually, in the industrial design department, collaborating with Kelly over here in the graphic design department in interaction. She teaches interaction design. And so we're heavily focused on collaboration and trying to talk about people engaging with other disciplines. I'm wondering if you could kind of talk to our students here about how collaborating with other disciplines has played a role in your work.
Sure. I think the industrial design or graphic design, is has an inevitably collaborative effort. And we are more into the industrial design, but it's a part of commercial activity, part of cycle, and because our output is mass-produced object that can't happen just by ourselves. So we work with industry. That means we work with, of course, engineers, marketing folks, sales guys, company executives who want to project their vision and put their capital into this endeavor. So working together with many different disciplines is given.
And many times also, for example, in the public projects, we have to work also with the people who are in maintenance, who have to deal with the things that we designed for many years, and we have to hear. So we have to listen to a lot of people, and we have to respect the knowledge and experience and expertise other people have, even if that's not always what we want to hear. And there's some things, we want to do, and then somebody comes and says you can't do it because X, Y, Z, but if they are right, they are right. And we have to respect it, and we have to find a middle ground or a way that works for everybody.
How do you prepare for the development of technologies, like emerging technologies, sort of trying to future-proof your designs, make sure, because you do a lot of design around digital displays, so is there any way that you allow for the changing firmware or user interface, stuff like that?
For on-screen stuff, of course, it's much easier to update something, but things that are tightly packaged, it's kind of hard to predict. But for example, this Link NYC, the sort of successor of the payphone, that is designed so it's first of all very easily to maintain, but also everything that is inside could be swapped out for other components, and that's largely the effort of the engineering team on it. But this is, for example, something that's designed to be upgradable and expandable also, because this is kind of a new thing, and we don't. Again, as I said before, we don't know yet what it actually all will do, because you can suddenly embed sensors in this thing, and it can measure air quality in different parts of the city. It can be a weather station. It can observe the environment and count how many people are passing by at what time of the day and so on. So these are also data gathering centers, but none of that is really known yet what will happen. So things can go in there, and the structure is designed to allow for that.
And it's as simple as the office furniture. We have done a few. You still need the power and the data, and the lifespan or life cycle of furniture and the sort of more technical bits like power and the data, they are very different. So if you integrate them, you are prematurely shortening the life of the furniture, which has much longer lifespan. So there we don't integrate, but we provide a way to flexibly accommodate different type of sort of technical needs. So there are different ways to go about. We can't really future-proof, but we try.
When you first started designing, did you have a project that you really wanted to do, and has that changed over the years as you've been doing other projects, and what is that now if you have one?
I think when I first started out, I really wanted to do furniture, and then I didn't have the opportunity until many, many years later. And I mean, office furniture is very different from residential. I wanted to do residential stuff early on, but somehow I never had the opportunity. But nowadays, I mean, kind of as Masamichi said, also the things that you're interested in change because of what you have done already and what you have seen and what you have been exposed to. So I think now we are, or I am at least, much more interested in things where I can see they really affect people's behavior and what people do. We also, some of the work that we're doing we cannot really show because it's confidential, but we've been working in the healthcare realm quite a bit, and that's really kind of exciting to see how through design we can help people, for example, adhere more to a certain therapy, which ultimately helps them, but we all know it's hard to stick to certain things that are not so pleasurable to do. So this has changed a lot, I find.
Okay. Back in '87, when I first got my first job in Japan at Yamaha, they used to make system furniture for residential use. And I didn't know much about system furniture. I just thought that's really Bauhausy and sounds interesting. So, and I was luckily accepted. But then I was assigned to design the musical instruments, totally different, electronic musical instruments. And but as I started doing that, I saw that's really cool. And then back in mid '80s, this school I went eventually, the Cranbrook, they had what's called the product semantics workshop, which I'm not going into the detail, but the outcome was published in Japan and throughout the world. I saw some of them. I got so fascinated by it. I had to go to that school, and I went, and I stayed in this country. Then, many, many years later, finally, in 2006, I got to do the system furniture. But went through completely different route that, I couldn't imagine anything. But, and at that time, the system furniture is not something I necessarily wanted to do, but it was yet another great opportunity. And so, it goes.
Hi, my question was kind of referring to the New York City versus the Washington subway car. That glass panel, it was very aesthetic in the Washington car. So it's
that decision was kind of made for us. So we initially had a glass panel at the end, and it even was approved at first, and only quite some time later it became, the Transit Authority just felt that this is too much of a liability because of the scratchity becoming very popular, and even if somebody scratches a profanity into the glass, that's a reason they have to take the train out of service. And then we learned about the workers are allowed only to carry so and so much weight, which means one glass panel has to be handled by 2 workers, and it has all these implications that we didn't know. So then the Transit Authority decided that they don't want to have the glass panel.
But also, this is something we learned over the time. If something's so complicated to maintain, and if something costs so much to operate, we think it's not good design. The good design should be appropriate to that environment or circumstance. So even if we like certain things, that may not be good for that particular application. And with that, we started thinking firmly, so less is more is really a good thing. If you can achieve the same thing with less things, it's more elegant. Maybe not the shape, not the form, but as existence, it's more elegant.
What led you to the initial New York City subway problem? Like, what series of events, what series of connections got you to that?
Maybe you want to answer this.
There was a sort of a bidding process that called for proposal. It wasn't design competition or anything. Typical sort of design project. Put together the proposal, the process, budget, so on and so forth. I actually got it. And we did, I think, good job. So that continued to the next one.
I think we will probably have to wrap up now, but before people get up, I just want to thank you both for a fantastic and inspired conversation. And thank you for making the world a better place with design. Before you all get up, we want to invite you up to the industrial design spaces on the 4th floor for a pizza party. So please join us and eat something and have some time to further the conversation with Antenna. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think we're ready to begin. And my job is a simple one, just to welcome you all to the Design Conversations lecture series, sponsored by the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. It's good to see you all, and it's great to have a full house here, as usual. We have a couple of things to take care of before we start today. I just would like to announce that one of our alums in graphic design, Chris Bailey from Philadelphia, Bailey Design Group, has generously supporting our videotape documentation of the lecture series. And so a big word of thanks to Chris Bailey. And otherwise, I'm going to, at this point, toss the ball to my colleague Josh Owen, who will pick up from here. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Roger. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see such a packed house tonight for our exciting lecturers, who we're delighted made it through difficult weather conditions to get here. I'm going to take a few minutes to start off with to announce our 2015 RIT Industrial Design Glass Lab Design Fellowship Award. A number of years ago, we did a cooperation with our friends at the Corning Museum of Glass and our other friends in the glass program here at RIT under the banner of the Vignelli Center in the Senior Studio Meta Project. And we had a wonderful time working together with Corning and with artists and designers in the same cohort. We learned a lot about each other and about the medium. Turns out Corning is an incredibly forward-thinking company, and they've organized something which they call Glass Lab, which exposes glass technology and hot glass as a medium for rapid prototyping to architects and designers, and they're specifically interested in that. They brought me down to do this Glass Lab shortly after we completed the student collaboration, and I was so enamored by the experience that
Thank you, Josh, for a nice introduction, and thank you everyone for being here and invited us over.
Yeah, we are very happy to be here. We were here once before, about more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago or so it's great to be back. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay, well, let's see. The time flies. It's been already over 18 years since we started our studio, and we've been quite lucky to have a collection of very good clients and projects. And we'd like to talk about some of the projects and talk about what we were thinking with it. We have a studio in New York City, in the far west Chelsea, and being in New York is quite a learning experience of its own. There are lots of funny people, and always interesting to observe, but more interesting to imagine what's happening in their heads, which is a really important part of the job for us, because we believe the purpose of the design is to change the behavior of the people for the better. And for that, we subscribe to rather old philosophy, which is called City Beautiful. That's one of the Enlightenment movement from 19th century, North American version, based largely on city planning and architecture. The idea of City Beautiful is simply by making great urban space through the architecture and monuments and the city planning, we can generate better behavior amongst the members of society. It's a very idealistic idea, but going through quite a few public projects with New York and DC, we came to believe this is really, or rather, we hope this is true, and this is our sort of a source of energy to go forward.
One of our first projects in the public realm, or maybe the first project in the public realm, was to design the ticket vending machine for the Metro card, which is the card that gives you access to the subways and the buses. And that project actually started
late 90s, and the machine was introduced in 99. So you have to kind of step back and imagine the past. It's way before
iPhone or any smartphone, and way before the generation where everybody is using a touch screen. Also, automation back then wasn't something that people embraced, because a lot of public equipment has been in bad condition, has been vandalized, malfunctioning. You saw a lot of things like this payphone, which you would not want to put your money in that. So
Because these machines just eat your money.
so it was in that context that we had to come and design a ticket vending machine that had a touch screen, and that was placed in the subway environment, which is a very harsh environment, which exposed to a lot of vandalism, and also, as I said, a lot of skepticism towards a machine. Also, as I mentioned, this was really before touchscreens were pervasive. Actually, when the project started, we thought people must be familiar with ATMs, because ATMs had, of course, touchscreens already then. But it turned out that at the time, about 50% of the ridership of New York City Transit or of the MTA actually did not have a bank account. So they were completely in the cash economy. So they had no experience with a touch screen. What they know about a screen is a television screen, and a television screen you're not supposed to touch. So again, this was something where we really had to shift people's behavior and embrace touchscreen.
Benefit greatly from the experience in their career path. It was not an easy choice. It never, ever is. This particular second-year graduate class is sort of a group of wunderkind, we say, of students from all over the world, all of them deeply passionate about industrial design, and interestingly, all of them twisted my arm into doing something like a glass lab with Corning last year. So they've all had an experience with glass lab already. That said, there was one clear winner, and this year's award goes to Timothy Copeland. So come on up. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it.
I will.
So Corning will be in touch soon about the details.
Okay.
All right.
I'll keep my phone charged.
All right. Exciting stuff. So, and now on to the meat of the act here, so to speak. We are delighted to have Antenna Design with us tonight. Do you want me to open it, or should I do it? Okay. Antenna Design New York was founded in 1997 by Masamichi Udagawa and Siggy Mosengler. Antenna's people-centered design work typically spans both physical and digital spaces, taking into account object, interface, and environment. In the public sector, Antenna has experience ranging from the design of New York City and Washington, D.C. subway cars to the automated ticket vending machines for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority. On the commercial side, Antenna works with technology companies to help them identify and design user-focused products and services. Antenna also has a close relationship with the office furniture company Knoll Incorporated, for which Antenna has been designing office systems since 2006. Antenna's work has won numerous awards, including the prestigious National Design Award in Product Design from the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in 2008, and Antenna's Help Point Intercom for the MTA is included in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Thank you for coming, and we welcome Antenna Design and are delighted that you're here today. Thanks. I worked closely with them to set up a fellowship, which would be a sort of feeder to Corning, bringing young industrial designers to go and do Glass Lab, which is essentially 2 days worth of working with master glass technicians in the rapid prototyping of design ideas. So in 2012, we had 2 students go down and do it. In 2013, we formalized the fellowship, and David Strauss was the recipient. Last year it was Bridget Sheehan, both of them grad students in ID. I think Bridget's here tonight somewhere. Bridget, are you here? Where are you? There she is. How was it? All right, there you go. So the Glass Lab Fellowship provides one RIT industrial design student, either a graduating senior or graduating grad student, with an opportunity to explore glass as a medium for rapid prototyping, in a 2-day Glass Lab session at the Corning Museum of Glass at the end of May each year. In addition to the CMOG session, the student is eligible to receive transportation reimbursement, an overnight stay in a hotel in Corning, and a $500 honorarium, and public acknowledgments from both RIT and CMOG. The criteria we've used for the selection of that student each year is that the faculty are looking for exceptional design skills, excellent communication skills across mediums, such as verbal, drawing, etc., a high degree of maturity, and most importantly, a strong track record of meaningful contributions to the industrial design program at RIT in terms of service to the department. The award design was done in a team several years ago, together with myself, with a glass artist from the School for American Crafts, a industrial design senior, and with Katie Nix, who's my colleague here in the Vignelli Center. Uh-oh. There we go. There should be another slide. Well, the other slide's not there, but I can tell you who the award recipient is. So, the award this year goes to a graduating graduate student from industrial design who, to the faculty, represented all the qualities that we look for. In addition to those qualities, we felt that this individual would